Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who is registered to vote. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I sure am and have been.
Yeah. Just want to let people know that today, in some states, today is the last day you can register to vote in the 2018 midterms. So please go to vote.org and there you can, one, you can register to vote. Do it now. Two, you can check whether or not you are registered to vote. Vote.org.
There we are. And remember, for those people who say one vote doesn't matter, we had an election here in Virginia for a House of Delegates seat, I believe.
Yes.
That was literally decided by one vote.
Yep. Every vote matters.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Okay. And also it's more so a representation of your contribution to the democracy in which you live.
There we go.
Yeah.
Every vote matters. Every question matters.
That's true.
On the Total Soccer Show. It's a listener questioned special. If you're expecting a USA-Colombia preview, all you got to do is wait 24 hours. We will have USA-Colombia preview for you Wednesday, right? Wednesday.
The momentary look of panic when Daryl forgets the day of the week.
But then I remembered.
We've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very good questions to get to today.
Yep. A lot of US men's national team themed ones as well.
And a lot, I got to say, this took me a while, these questions, and none of them were particularly research-heavy. It was just a lot of deep thought questions.
A lot of brain thinking.
Yeah. It hurts my head every time, but I still do it.
Who's going to ask the first one? I feel like we're both
You can ask the first one.
It's like a standoff here.
Done. I'll allow you to go.
Neil Shewitt wants to know. He says, reviews of US men's national team matches commonly criticise the team for keeping a striker on an island and misusing Bradley or Trapp as a number 6. What are your thoughts for why these are issues that have continued across multiple US men's national team coaches? Before we start, should we define striker on an island? Or is it really obvious?
No, we can do it. It's essentially, I would even go so far as to say, like, if you're thinking about a 4-2-3-1, which is something the United States has been thinking about a lot in the recent years, that one is the striker, but sometimes you can leave that striker very isolated, depending on your positioning, so they don't have much around them, thus they're on an island.
And I would agree that has happened a lot to, say, Josie Altidore or Bobby Wood in recent years. And I guess the misusing of Bradley or Trapp as a number 6 is about leaving them on their own as well, right?
Yeah.
This is almost like, why are US players so lonely?
Yeah. I would say, though, like, from the start, like, this is the question that I think really did give me the most trouble, strangely enough, because I don't think there is one unified answer for why this keeps happening.
Oh, there's many.
Because I would start with, I don't know if it does keep happening, because think back to the 2014 World Cup, we had Kyle Beckerman as our number 6 in there. So it's not like Bradley's been doing this since 2011 when Bob Bradley was around.
No, but it is a problem that seems to pop up more with the US than, say, when I'm watching England.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah. So it is a US problem, and it has persisted across multiple coaches.
And so I think one of my explanations for it is going to be that I think you rely on your best players. I think Michael Bradley has been one of our best players, and so you look at where he fits in the most. Didn't really work as a number 10, not necessarily working as a number 8, but you're going to put him in there somewhere. And so I think that's part of it. But the other aspect I think that factors into it is that a lot of times national team strategy is informed by what is the most common, 4-2-3-1. Then for like a period of time, maybe even now, it's like the 3-4-2-1 was en vogue, and so that gets used.
4-1-4-1 that we've been using most recently under Dave Sarachan is maybe even the prime offender of this when you get it wrong.
Exactly. But I think, though, that a lot of times when that formation is the fashionable formation, you end up using it, but maybe you don't have the personnel to execute that game plan, but it's what, say, Michael Bradley is used to or Christian Pulisic is used to. It's just Christian Pulisic is being used to maybe being used out wide, Michael Bradley more central. But I think then you don't always develop players that specifically suit that style. So I think, for example, look at the dearth of number 9s we have right now. I don't think you have many number 9s who are challenging for first-team spots or starting for big clubs around the world, playing as that number 9 in a 4-2-3-1. So then to expect the United States to have that, it leaves you with problem areas, basically.
Okay, this gets to one of the points that I had, which is we essentially, because we're not a big nation that can play 2 or 3 strikers at once, we end up with the one striker system so that we can get more men in midfield. But the people we end up using as the one striker are not necessarily suited to that role.
Exactly.
Right? We don't have Robert Lewandowski, right? We don't have, say, Harry Kane. We have Josie Altidore and Bobby Wood. And maybe Josh Sargent is a guy that can do it in the future. But I would argue that Altidore and Wood in the past few years have not been guys that were well suited to be in that one striker.
Yeah.
But it was a system the US sort of had to go with sometimes because we couldn't sacrifice the numbers in midfield.
I agree. I would just add one other point, though, is that look at the struggles that Bayern are having right now. We talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
Even Robert Lewandowski being Robert Lewandowski, if he doesn't get service and good players around him helping facilitate attacks, he doesn't score and Bayern struggle. Same thing here.
I think the players around him part is important as well, because one of the things I think about with the US is a one-striker system really works when the other players get to go and join him, right? Think of Chelsea right now. Technically, they have a one-striker system. It's Olivier Giroud, right? Sometimes Morata. But how often do you see Hazard from the left and Willian from the right being next to him and combining with him, right? So then the one striker actually becomes three strikers. But how often have we seen the US in some sort of 4-1-4-1 or 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, and you really end up with the one striker in the middle and the wide guys end up defending, right?
Yeah.
They end up chasing backwards a lot and they can't go and join the striker. And so I would say that this is a problem of, maybe it's a problem of US ball retention. Like if we had the ball a lot, those guys could get forward and get involved. But because we don't, they spend too much time doing the defensive work.
Yeah.
But Jassi Zardes, we put Jassi Zardes out there, and theoretically you think, oh, that's a guy that can play on the wing. He's going to drift and play alongside the striker, but then he ends up doing like a defensive right midfielder job.
Well, yeah. But I would extend that to basically if you're the U.S. national team, you generally are going to be defending more. Like that's like unless you're playing weaker opposition, if you're trying to compete in qualifying or compete at a World Cup or another tournament, you're going to be playing defensive, then maybe counterattacking. Occasionally, maybe you have more of the ball.
Yeah.
And so I think with that, you're going to spend a lot of time game planning. How do we defend? How do we counterattack? How do we break? Maybe you're not going to be focused so much on, okay, but when we have sustained possession in the opposition half, how are we using our forward? How are we making sure he stays connected? And I think that's a major issue.
That's about player selection as well, right? Because when the US plays Brazil, for example, in the recent friendly, we don't think, okay, who's the right mid and left mid? We don't pick an all-out attacking Eden Hazard-style wide player. We pick a player who's going to be more useful. You've got to factor the defensive side into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I also think that like all of that then informs the other aspect for me, which is that it was explained to me once because I was a place kicker as a way to like, remind me that everybody makes mistakes, is that if you're like the offensive tackle, the left tackle, people might not necessarily know that you've messed up even if the quarterback gets sacked. Because
I genuinely don't know what the left tackle is.
They block. They protect the quarterback, right?
They're the line that protects the quarterback.
The big fellas.
The big fellas. All right.
The big fellas blocking the other big fellas is usually how that works. But if you let your the defense through, they sack the quarterback. It might not be as obvious to people up in the stands watching as when the place kicker misses the field goal or the punter drops the ball, right? Like it becomes that much more obvious. And I think you might not notice as much if the left back's getting forward or is this number 8 dropping in when he needs to, but you're going to notice, hey, that striker hasn't gotten the ball and isn't scoring. And you're going to notice, hey, this number 6 is on an island and keeps dropping back between the center backs as a result.
I think that's true. Yeah, maybe it isn't necessarily the biggest problem, but it's the most noticeable problem. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
I hadn't thought of that.
Thank you for saying it more succinctly.
I 100% agree with that. I think that's really interesting. I bet there are a lot of games where people are like, what is Josie Altidore doing? And the fact is, he's probably just waiting for his teammates to do their job and get the ball to him.
Yeah, and I think there have definitely been reasons in the past and in the present to be critical of Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley, but I also think that we hear a lot of criticism about Michael Bradley. And I bet my wife, if you asked her, she would say like, oh yeah, Michael Bradley, he's not doing very well. Right? Like she would have heard that coverage. And if you watch a game and you see Michael Bradley misplace a pass or not make a tackle, and you already have this perspective of, oh, he's not doing well, then you're going to see that and think, oh, yeah, he's definitely not doing well. Did you see him miss that pass? And so I think that also factors into how publicly you see those players do something or not do something, and then it sticks with you.
Before we do talk about the isolated number 6, one more thing with the forward, I think, is our lack of number 10s. Because what a lot of teams have done historically, if not so much recently, is you manage to have the extra central midfielder. So maybe you can have 3 central midfielders in some way. But then one of them is like a number 10 who is then also capable of literally linking the midfield and the attack. So you have a guy that will be a midfielder but will contribute to the attack and be involved with that striker. We're famously lacking that kind of player, right?
Yeah.
We just don't have one right now who's both a central midfielder and an attacking player. Like even Clint Dempsey was always more of a forward than he was a midfielder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like maybe Spurs can use Dele Alli or Christian Eriksen in that role, guys who really can play central midfield and really can be almost a striker, but like a slightly withdrawn one. The US just doesn't have that player.
No.
And that's why the striker gets isolated.
Yeah, and then it becomes this weird like logic loop of, okay, well then why don't we move another like player forward, and that way we have two strikers, they can work off of each other. Well, then you're pretty much describing a 4-4-2 or something akin to it, which means you only have two central midfielders. So then you're playing against a midfield that has three, you're automatically going to be outnumbered. Well, then why don't you drop one of those forwards back, and then they can help out, and suddenly you go back and forth in what you're trying to do.
It's like, I wrote this in my notes, it's like a duvet or a bed comforter that's too short, and you can't get it up around your shoulders because your toes are sticking out, and if you pull it down to cover your toes, then your shoulders are cold. Like the US keeps making sacrifices to try and cover for the fact that the duvet is too short. And I would argue, to pick up on a thing you just said, the formation that Bruce Arena essentially settled on and infamously used against Trinidad was to say, okay, we're not going to have one striker, we're going to have two strikers. But then you sacrificed the extra midfielder and you left Michael Bradley alone at the number 6, and then he comes in for criticism. So it's the endless trade-off of the too short duvet.
I promise I listened to all of that. I have a response to your duvet
I
comment.
That means you doesn't.
No, I definitely did. I just have a response to your duvet comment, which is one of my greatest pieces of advice for people who are going to be cohabitating, sharing a bed. Buy the cover that's one size larger than your bed.
Yes.
So if you sleep in a queen, buy a king size.
There's plenty
there's plenty to go around. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not fighting over blankets. And also, number 6 is kind of an issue.
So I think that's really good advice to close on that question.
There we go.
Ready for the next one?
I think so. Do you want me to ask this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Be my guest.
From John, not that one, Adams. We know that because otherwise this would be a very litigious and particular question. Should the USA...
But medically impressive.
That's true. Should the USA national team be playing more friendlies away in our region? If we want our current or next generation to be able to win away in places like Trinidad and Tobago, Mexico, Costa Rica, etc., should we be practicing making those trips and playing on their field conditions? Why is this a good or bad strategy for preparing the next generation?
So I thought there's some bias in John's question. He definitely thinks it's a good strategy for preparing the next generation.
I appreciate the why is it a good or bad strategy being thrown in there to cover that.
Yeah, or bad was in like 1 point font. So to answer John's question, let's first say it could work, right? If we went and played a bunch of friendlies away in Central America, we would theoretically be better prepared for when we did the same in the Hex. But it would not be pleasant.
No, it definitely would not.
It would. Like, the reason that going away to, say, Honduras is unpleasant for the players, I'm not sure it's necessarily a good thing to ask the players to continually go through that. Right?
No.
Then you will have a load of US national team players who, patriotic as they feel, are going to have a less enjoyable time being called up to the US national team.
I think you might see a lot more back injuries right before international duty.
It'd be bad for morale as well. Yeah. Even the players who stick through it, it'll be really bad for morale if we did this all the time.
Yeah, because I know you could make an argument that like, oh, but if you go there, maybe like, I forget who I saw making this argument that if you went to Honduras for a friendly or Panama for a friendly, normally in a World Cup qualifier, the pressure's on them to get a point. That's their opportunity to get a point, maybe get 3 points. So they're going to be defensive and CONCACAF-y. Maybe if you play them in a friendly, they'll be a bit more open and they'll try to actually win because it's a friendly. But I think that's a lot of conditional statements that support an argument that maybe you want that to be the case that's happening. Whereas I think it'd be very difficult to convince players to leave cushy club gigs in Germany and England to go fight for a friendly point in Honduras or Guatemala.
There's also the money aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that we have friendlies, away to, say, England, is that the English FA has a lot of money, and we don't know about really the details of the negotiations between various federations, but I think it's fair to say the wealthier federations can offer maybe a fee for you playing, maybe like a share of the tickets. They can offer you nice hotels. They can maybe fly you over there. But there's a lot to be said for leaning on a more prosperous federation.
Yes. And so I actually had a text conversation back and forth with our friend and yours, Paul Tenorio, about why this is the case. And I genuinely...
Why we don't go to Central America.
Yes. Yeah. And I genuinely think he couldn't understand what I was asking because the answer was so obvious. And so like we talked a lot about how like you end up playing the teams you've already played in years past because you already have the kind of contracts in place, so you can kind of just reuse those contracts.
Well, that's interesting.
And you have the existing relationships.
So I was at Wembley the last time.
But this wasn't his obvious part. I'll get to that in a second.
I was at Wembley the last time the US played England at Wembley. So I can't remember what the year was, but I can imagine that they just sort of got that same contract, changed a few dates, and put it back in front of them.
Yeah, because you have this, like you have the reasonable expectations of what they're going to want or what they're going to offer, and you kind of go from there.
Like just scratch out Galati and write Cordero's signature.
Yeah, exactly. Paul's point, which I think is very worth remembering.
We have his permission to share all this, by the way.
I think so. I said I'm going to cite you on that, and he didn't respond, which is what I was just frantically checking right as we were recording. Is basically he said because until this last cycle they didn't worry about qualifying. That
interesting.
This is a recency bias that we are worried about qualifying, worried about how we do on the road in CONCACAF because it hasn't been a problem before, and so their priority has been we want to play teams that we're going to play in major international competitions or players of that quality, and more than likely we're not going to be playing. I don't mean this to be like overly explaining, but we're not going to play a World Cup in Guatemala. We're going to play a World Cup in Germany, or we're going to play a World Cup in France.
And crucially, against Germany and against France.
And so that's where you go to prepare. That's basically been the logic in the past. I'm not saying that excuses it, because obviously maybe you are putting the cart before the horse nowadays, but that is the reason why in the past.
I do like the humility of John Adams' question, though, because maybe it is like a new thing that the US soccer and the US national team maybe needs to think about as like CONCACAF's getting better. Maybe we need to take the region more seriously. Maybe we need to make extra sure that we're ready to play these away games.
So if only there was some way to create a competition that forces you to play meaningful friendlies against teams within your own region.
So there we go. Yeah. I think this is the real answer to John's question, especially because, as you mentioned earlier, if you go and play a friendly away to Panama or Honduras or Guatemala, it's not the same intensity because there's no points on the line. But here comes the CONCACAF Nations League.
Yeah, and it requires you to go play those games on the road. And I think that is going to be the big difference maker for me. Because number one, now it's going to be required by the Federation or Confederation. It's going to be required by FIFA. So you're going to participate. Yep. It kind of alleviates some of that club concern because now you have to play these games. It's not just the United States saying, hey, let's go play in Panama. It's CONCACAF saying you have to go play this team.
Here's your away fixture. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think
one ticket to Panama City.
And so now you have competitive games that are like justified and you have to take them seriously. But the other thing is I think it removes, for lack of a better way of putting it, like human error and like I guess selfishness or just like power dynamics. Because I think the other aspect of it is that the United States, I mean, look at who we're playing these like in our most recent friendlies. We're playing Colombia, we're playing Peru, we're playing Mexico, we're playing these bigger name countries.
Brazil,
right?
England, Italy, the current six, right?
Exactly. And so I think if you're US soccer, again, not saying this is justified, but I'm saying this is how tends to be how people in power think, is if suddenly you were to say, okay, fine, we're going to play a friendly away to Nicaragua. I feel like we've just listed every like Central American country, so I just want to keep that going. If you're Carlos Cordero or whomever negotiates these deals, I think if you've just negotiated a deal to go play Italy in Italy, you're probably going to be a little arrogant when you approach that negotiation. And you're going to be like, all right, well, you guys are paying for this, and you have to deal with that, and you have to provide this, and you have to guarantee that.
Yeah.
And suddenly I think that informs negotiation, and I think that makes it harder. You remove that because now the Nations League requires you to play these games, and suddenly it takes away some of that, the business side of things, which I think is a good thing.
So really, CONCACAF has solved the problem for us.
They're
going to give us away games against CONCACAF teams with points on the line starting September 2019, like ahead of World Cup qualifying.
Yeah.
So thanks CONCACAF.
Yeah, good stuff, CONCACAF. Well done. We don't say that very often, ever. But yeah, good stuff, CONCACAF.
Next question is from, it's the synergy question. I literally wrote synergy.
It made Daryl gasp.
Okay, you ready? This is going to be a question that's also half an ad read. We're going to blur the lines of editorial and advertising.
We're all about seamless sponsored content over here.
Yeah, where we announce it ahead of time.
Exactly.
Richard Rawson, who I believe was not planted by The Athletic. This is a genuine question. Richard asked...
It is what George Qureshi goes by sometimes.
Richard Rawson, who is not George Qureshi, a pseudonym, says, Total Soccer Show sponsor, The Athletic. Correct. Recently published an interesting article by Jeff Rutter titled, What Will It Take for the American Soccer Nation to Care More About the Open Cup? Richard's question is, if US Soccer President Carlos Cordero turned to the Total Soccer Show, that's just me and you, and asked you to revitalize the importance of the US Open Cup, what steps would you take?
First of all, I would love that conversation because I don't think you would ever hear anybody say "who" louder than when he was told he had to talk to us. So that's one.
Someone should say the guys that tried to interview you at the
yes.
at the convention.
The guys that said we enjoy that you actually seem to have a grasp on numbers and would like to talk to you, and he said, "Yeah, we'll definitely talk." And here we are.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. So Jeff did have some ideas in his article, including having.
Yeah.
Do we want to give them away, or should we make people read them?
In the interest of synergy, let's give away at least a couple of Jeff's ideas to revitalize the US Open Cup from our sponsor, The Athletic.
Yeah, I think the one that you hear a lot, and I think justifiably so, is that the prize money isn't very big to incentivize specifically Major League Soccer teams to take it seriously. I think
because they don't play their first team all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's only $300,000 and a guaranteed spot in the CONCACAF Champions League. But as he points out, if you have a weaker MLS side winning at US Open Cup, then that means you have a weaker side participating in CONCACAF Champions League.
Houston Dynamo.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So that isn't always the greatest incentive. So he talked about maybe increasing the prize money. Another one would be having these smaller local teams hosting games until a specific point in the competition. So that way you have bigger clubs traveling to smaller grounds.
Yeah. Let's think about that for a second then. I do like the idea of a small team packing it out to face off against a bigger rival because they have like a weird home field advantage. Maybe the local population gets people who maybe casually attend games. Let's say it's Detroit City FC, right? So suddenly maybe loads more people pack the stadium for the visit of New York City FC.
Sure.
Yeah? I mean, I could see the logic in that. That would be more of a televisable event.
Yeah. The only thing, I'm not trying to nitpick here because plenty of my solutions are never going to be approved, so it doesn't really matter. But I do think that you're going to run to the issue of MLS clubs not wanting to do that. They're not going to say we're just going to give up the right to host a game and instead we're going to send our second team.
We're going to stick all our players on a plane again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think they're going to want to do that, and so I think that's going to be a problem. But I still think it makes sense because I think for the Richmond Kickers, who do okay, they average I don't know, their numbers fluctuate because it has been a great season, but
I want to say 5,000-6,000.
Yeah, but if you had that same NYCFC team coming to Richmond, I do think you're going to get a little bit more interest because it's New York and because it's bigger teams and because you've got some names in there that are recognizable.
But at the same time, we have had teams come to town,
this is
right?
True.
And attendance hasn't gone through the roof.
No.
It's not as if it's 5,000-6,000 and then an MLS team comes to town and suddenly 12,000 people are in there.
Yeah,
that's people are not that excited about seeing a Major League Soccer team that we're going to double the crowd.
Yeah, and I would say maybe not the greatest example, but 2015, the Columbus Crew came to Richmond. Tony Chani, I believe, scored in that. Ethan Finley scored in that. So I mean, you've got names in there that are recognizable and known, and that was still I think 4,000 in attendance.
Yep, I saw the Kickers beat the LA Galaxy in 2007. Landon Donovan played the second half. 4,500 people. Which was above the average at the time, but not massively above the average at the time.
No. Yeah. So I think we've talked about some of Jeff's solutions. There are obviously other ones in that article. Let's talk about some of our own.
Okay. Are you asking me to go first?
I can go first if you want. Or would you rather go?
No, you go first.
Okay. I would say one thing you could do is set aside money for an Open Cup review show, a la Match of the Day. And I do think this is big. I do think this is important.
Is this more US soccer money we're spending there? Is this like us dipping into the 150 million again?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
I don't care. I mean, you have to spend money. You can't just have free of cost changes that suddenly make everybody care. But I think part of it, and Jeff talks about this in the article, is that I think only the final was broadcast this season or this competition. Every other one you had to go to
USsoccer.com.
Yeah.
It was just streamed on the website. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think if you did a full hour-long review round by round where you showed highlights, but more than just showing 3-minute highlights with music behind them, if you had people there breaking down...
can I just vote no music ever behind highlights?
That's fine. I'm with you on that one, yeah. And instead you had people explaining who this person is or who this team is or how they did that.
Yeah, and then you learn the heroes, right?
Exactly.
The guys that scored for, say, Christos FC, their name would be all over that TV show.
Yeah, but yes. And so to Jeff's point, though, about awareness and how you can have all those games and that's great to stream them, but does a random person watching ESPN or BN or Fox or whatever see those games? Probably not. So if you find a way to put this on, I don't know, late night on FS2 or something like that, where there's probably not going to be that much commercial competition or like monetary competition, you could probably do that hour-long review show. People can set their DVRs. Suddenly you've got all the highlights from around the US Open Cup.
Oh, right. I mean, US Soccer could even produce that themselves, right? Rather than outsourcing it. And I guess, would you be comfortable with them streaming that, or do you think it has to be on a cable
I think, well, since
somewhere?
we're being consulted, I think it probably needs to be available for like on YouTube, but then you can also watch it like an hour before on TV, and then it probably should be hosted by us.
So this is like a pitch and brainstorming.
No.
My guess, actually, for if the US Open Cup starts to get regular television, my guess would be it's on ESPN Plus.
Yeah,
which isn't really television, but streaming, right?
That's
what's happened to the USL.
But I guess that's what I'm saying is I want something to be on television where it's like, oh wow, this thing is there. There's an hour-long highlight show. People like highlights. People like seeing goals. If you get a bicycle in there that leads the way, you might get a few people who are just finished watching SportsCenter, but they stick around to watch that guy score that bike.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that's true. Okay, here's my idea.
What you got? I have one more big one. But then go ahead.
Let's go back and forth because I've got more ideas as well. We've always got ideas. The one thing we're never short of on the Total Soccer Show, it's ideas that we haven't fully thought through. So I think right now, when people try to convince you to watch the US Open Cup, they talk a lot about tradition, right? Like it's been around since 1914 and all that, and it's got a history. But I actually feel like, in a weird way, that's part of the problem, is it feels kind of dusty, right? I imagine the US Open Cup having a bit of dust on it. I hope Houston Dynamo polished it after they got it. I think it needs a sort of relaunch and almost a rebrand. And what I would do, what I would really try hard to do, is get a sponsor who is really willing to put their name on the trophy, which is unfortunate, right? Because then you lose some of that, like, the purity of tradition. So
it's the Lamar Hunt US Open Cup, so you're going to get rid of Lamar Hunt?
No, I'm going to add an extra name to it.
So the Toyota Corolla Lamar Hunt US Open Cup?
Something like that, yeah. So then you get some money in there without taking it out of US Soccer's coffers. And I would make it part of a bigger just rebrand, like come out with some new logos and like the TV show that you're talking about, have a specific look for that TV show. And really, because it is so far out of the public consciousness, like sometimes I don't even know that US Open Cup rounds are coming until they're suddenly on top of us, right? Make that part of a big relaunch where you really make some noise about the US Open Cup or the Toyota Corolla US Open Cup. So it's like essentially a rebrand and a relaunch and really stick it in people's faces.
See, here's the thing. I don't disagree with you. I had that thought too. The concern I had with that is I genuinely have no idea when the last time they did a rebrand was. It may have been 10 years ago. It may have been last year. And that, again, it speaks to...
It may have been when it was launched in 1914.
That could be. But it still speaks to, I feel like it still has that, the kind of dusty, stuffy, like, oh, yeah, it doesn't really matter. MLS teams don't really take it seriously. I like the rebrand idea, but I think you've got to really have the... I will edit it so that I don't sound like Clay Davis. I will instead say the "oh shoot" moment. You need a thing that makes people like, "oh shoot, I got to watch this now."
Yeah.
So here's mine, and it's ludicrous and never going to happen, but I think it would work.
We're going to get ludicrous in?
If you win yes, he's going to perform in every game. If you win the U.S. Open Cup twice in a 5-year period, you get fast-tracked to MLS or USL expansion, and your expansion fee is like cut in half. Wow. So then suddenly, if you win it twice in 5 years, you can become an MLS. Like you are on the short list, and you only have to pay a $25 million fee instead of $150 or whatever it is. Suddenly, there is incentive to win that. And does Anthony Precourt buy the crew, or does he buy, a struggling USL side and put a ton of money into them so that they win US Open Cup twice?
Wow! I mean, so. That's an interesting idea.
Yep. It's an offshoot thing, isn't it?
It certainly is. The other part of this is US Open Cup is run by US Soccer, right? It is not run by Major League Soccer. It is not run by USL. It is not run by what may soon be NASL Pro. I wonder if there's a way, I'm not saying this to criticize your idea, but I'm thinking of that as an example. You would need MLS to buy into that expansion giveaway thing, right? I wonder if there's a way.
Good point. They're definitely not going to do that.
But I wonder if there's a way to include all the leagues in the US Open Cup. Like almost, if US Soccer could say, all right, instead of us making this like maybe the least important thing on our list after all the national teams and everything else, how about if we just make it obviously this would maybe be part of the rebrand, but we make it a tournament that is owned by the federation, equally by the federation and equally by the professional leagues.
So why would that make a difference?
So that you could pool resources. Like everybody could put their own resources in it. Maybe you have a more democratic say. So MLS teams could have a say in how things are structured if you talk about any sort of reorganization. Like you make it something that every soccer league and club owns versus a thing that just US Soccer keeps ticking along without really pushing it anywhere.
See, I want to believe that they would be down for that, but I feel like that's still you're now making MLS do more work than they already don't want to do. Like they don't already want to play their first team players. They don't want to take that competition too seriously, or at least they don't have the resources to do it. So I feel like then being like, oh, but you guys are in control of it now. That then suddenly it's going to be Major League Soccer saying, all right, we'll play our first teams, but only if we automatically enter in the second round, and we don't have to do this or this or this.
Think of it this way, as an example, we don't have to hash this out till one person's right or wrong, but if MLS owned a piece of it, MLS could start saying, hey, you win the US Open Cup, you get $500,000 in allocation money. Like you could start folding it into the Major League Soccer mechanism, sort of like your expansion fee thing as well, right? But you can only do ideas like that if MLS literally owns a piece of the trophy.
No.
So there's one idea. The other idea, this is more of an observation than an idea. One of the problems with the US Open Cup is that for all we want the magic of the cup and the romance, the fact is that the quality of teams as you go down the leagues in American soccer is not that high. There's just not that much depth compared to somewhere like England where, it's feasible that a League One or League Two team could pick off a Premier League team on, is the phrase like any given Saturday, let's say, in this case, because there is a depth of quality there, right? I really think the way to make the US Open Cup better is just to have more and better teams in the United States so that teams have a chance when they play the bigger teams.
Yeah, because, you're absolutely right.
It's a bigger picture solution, right? Is make all of American soccer better and then US Open Cup will get better because of it.
But think about the teams that we've used as examples. Like we talked about the Crew, but we've gone with New York and we've gone with LA. And I think that whereas...
City and Galaxy.
Yes. When you look at England, to your point, you've got lots of it, basically any Premier League scalp matters. And so I don't...
I see, yeah. So the scalp's more valuable.
Yes, exactly. But I'm saying, would a League One side and their fans be really excited to beat Fulham? Absolutely, because it's a Premier League team. I think Richmond Kickers fans would be excited to beat Orlando, but I don't know if it carries that level of weight, and I don't know if the prospect of beating Orlando City is going to make that stadium sell out or that game sell out or really attract that attention. And so that's one aspect of it. But then the second part, which I think is your actual point, is that it also is the case that it matters that it's Fulham because Fulham are competing in the Premier League, which has more money than anything in the world. And so then to have that quality that they maybe could beat that League One team, but you're still beating a team in the Premier League, it matters that much more.
So that is interesting, but that wasn't my actual point. The point was just that there are teams in League One that are capable of achieving that.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get there and I just didn't do it. But yeah.
But the point is that there's depth in English soccer. The reason that the FA Cup is so exciting and the magic of the cup and all that is that there is quality all the way down, which does not exist in American soccer.
Yes.
Right? So Christos FC, there were some really good players on that team, but they're kind of an outlier in terms of amateur teams that were capable of taking on USL teams. They beat the Kickers and giving MLS teams a game, right?
Yeah.
So we need more of those teams, and that means just improving American soccer overall.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Do you have any other ideas you want to throw at me?
No, I think I just want to badly paraphrase what you're trying to say. No, I think what I was trying to get at is that you have so much money if you're Fulham that it seems like it's this massive deal, but in reality there's lots of money in English soccer, and so there's the money there for a League One side to compete at least somewhat. Maybe it means they're ultra defensive, but they're still competing, but it still feels like a bigger deal when they end up getting the result.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that wasn't the only story on The Athletic, obviously. There are many, many stories published every day on The Athletic as a whole, and in the soccer section specifically. I also saw a story by Will Parchman. Will Parchman has a really good piece. I feel like everything he writes is really well written. It always starts with a bit of imagery. Did you read the story? It started with the cracked ice. It was very nice. If we're thinking about Greg Berhalter as a potential US men's national team manager, then one of the most impressive things that Greg Berhalter has done is manage the Columbus Crew successfully this season under duress.
See, yes, and I'm with you. I'm just shocked that the cracked ice is what stood out to you as opposed to Will Parchman casually quoting a book by an Icelandic first responder about crisis management and what it takes to be a crisis leader.
Yep.
That was the part where I was like, is Will Parchman just casually reading these books that inform his understanding of the world in soccer?
Yes.
And the answer is, I need to get a library card.
Is that why you texted me that thing today?
No, that just came to mind. No, but that is amazing, that app. Get Libby. Get the app Libby. Libby, folks. Get that one. It's good for you.
So, yeah, I mean, I really genuinely had not thought about Greg Berhalter in that light. And I know there's already a weird turn against Greg Berhalter coming just because of the circumstances of everybody being very suspicious that US Soccer's already decided that it's him. But I think what Parchman brings up is a really fascinating way of looking at him. The fact that he has performed and kept the team performing and kept them all together in such weird, terrible circumstances where the club might be uprooted and dragged to another city is a really impressive feat of man management, which is maybe a thing we don't think of enough when we think of who the US men's national team coach should be.
Was that a play on words? Uprooted?
Because of the tree logo? Yes, possibly.
Did you mean for that to happen? Because if not, that was pretty well done, my friend.
It is only because I recently edited a story about this, so I'd been deep in the wordplay. Yeah.
See, if it's an unintentional pun, I can deal with it. An intentional pun, I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about that. But yeah, so I think, and it's a good reminder, I still think I understand Greg Berhalter and have an understanding of what he's done with Columbus, but it's worth remembering that, unless you're there, a Columbus fan, seeing what he does every single game, it's easy to just dismiss it as it's an MLS coach, they're just hiring another MLS coach. And until you read these articles and think about it a little bit differently and think about what he's doing and how he's managing 400 different spinning plates, it really doesn't sink in how good of a job he's doing.
Because I just thought of it as, possession soccer, maybe they don't score that many goals, but they don't concede many either, all that kind of stuff. But the fact that he's spinning plates and some of them are cracked and some of the plates are
held together by duct tape,
have been boxed up, ready to move, makes what he's doing all the more impressive. So if you want to read that Will Parchman article and you want to read the Jeff Rutter article about the US Open Cup, and you want to read, there's probably another 10 stories been published since we started recording this podcast, you've got to subscribe to The Athletic. There's also my story about James Maddison, who is now part of the England national team. He was called up. We'll talk about that tomorrow when we talk national team stuff. Go to theathletic.com/TSS October. You'll get 40% off the price of a subscription.
And thank you to Jeff Reuter for writing that article.
It is not. It's Jeff Reuter. How dare you? It's worse when you do it deliberately. It is
much
worse
like your
when
puns.
you do it
See how it works? See how it works?
Speaking of puns, do you remember when we said if The Athletic comes back and advertises with us in October, we will try and get the discount code to be the Hunt for Red October?
Oh, I forgot about that.
To do it. It's kind of my fault. When they came back, I should have said, can you make this the discount code? I'm sorry we didn't get to do it.
All right, but can we insist that if they stick around for November, it be November Rain? Because I'm going to insist that happen.
Oh, yes, we can try.
You don't know what song I'm referencing, do you?
I know Guns N' Roses.
Okay, there was an absent look in your face that made me slightly concerned.
No. I know piano.
I'm sorry, we're not all Oasis.
Piano, church, crying.
Yeah, I like the Gallaghers. We all have mod haircuts. Whatever.
Why are you mocking Oasis? What's that got to do with it?
Because you love Oasis, don't you?
I mean, I did when I was younger.
Yeah,
just as you love Guns N' Roses when you were younger.
But I still love Guns N' Roses.
I was going to say, but we're all mature. Anyway, it's theathletic.com/TSS October.
Appetite for Destruction is one of the greatest rock albums of all time. I'm throwing that out there. Now then, we have more questions to get to.
Yeah.
Up next, coming from Anthony Valdivia, who asks, what currently eligible players in MLS do you hope consider representing the USMNT if or when they obtain U.S. citizenship? By eligible, I mean they meet requirements under FIFA in order to represent the U.S. For example, based on current form, I wouldn't mind seeing recent green card holder Luciano Acosta as an option off the bench or playing centrally in front of McKennie or Adams.
Okay.
And Adams, excuse me.
So this is sort of what Dom Dwyer did.
Yep.
It's what Darlington Nagbe did. I think it's what Stephen Fry did. It's worth... Kakuta Mane also. It's worth just explaining to people before we give our list of players that we've spotted who are possibly eligible what the scenario is. It's not as simple as just you get a green card, you eventually become a US citizen, then you can play for the US men's national team, right? There is a very particular thing about the one-time switch, which is you can only make a one-time switch to your new nationality. You can't make a one-time switch to a nationality you later acquire. That makes sense?
Yeah. So
so if someone played for Argentina, say Diego Valeri played for Argentina back in the day, right, before he'd ever even thought about playing anywhere in America, right? Then say Diego Valeri came here, say he got a green card, and then he became a citizen. He could not one-time switch from Argentina to the US because he played for Argentina when he was only an Argentinian citizen.
Yes.
So you can't switch to a new nationality if you've already played for your team.
Right.
Yeah?
At any level. So if Diego Valeri played for the Argentina U15 national team once, then that's that.
Yep,
because he wasn't eligible to represent the U.S. before he was 18. Before he was 18, he represented Argentina. There you go.
Yep. Okay. So with those ground rules in place.
Yes.
It's also worth talking about just how it works as well with immigration. If you get a green card, you count as a domestic player. That's why players do it, right, to be in Major League Soccer. It is normally then 5 years until you can take U.S. citizenship. Or if you marry a U.S. citizen, 3 years until you can take US citizenship. Just so everybody knows what the timelines are here for players that we might be thinking about.
And one thing I wanted to clarify, because all that is, as I understand it, correct. The other thing that I didn't know until this is that I just kind of assumed it was like, oh, once you get your green card, the process to become a citizen is usually about 5 years. Not the case. I think you actually do have to wait like 4 years until you can apply for a like changing of status, and even then from there it takes another like year or whatever. So it's not even the case that like,
about 9 months.
You can fast track citizenship.
This is a thing I've looked into.
There we go. So all I'm saying though is that it's not a thing that can be fast tracked. Like, oh, sometimes it takes 5 years, but you can make it take 3 if you work really hard.
Yeah.
It is the case that unless you marry somebody, it's going to take 5 years.
Exactly that. Okay, so all that in mind, who are some possible players who theoretically could become US national team players that we would like to see?
I mean, I think Anthony's nailed it on the head with Luciano Costa for me, especially given the season he's had playing with Wayne Rooney. The issue, again, is that he got his green card in January 2018 when he was 23. Right now, he can't become a citizen for 5 years. That makes him 28, 29 years old, and that's kind of the best case scenario. So,
so the weird thing is Acosta is a perfect candidate because he fills that position we were talking about earlier, the central midfielder who can contribute to the attack. He is exactly what the US needs right now. But 5 years from now, like maybe it's too late, right? If we're still desperate for number 10s and he's 28, 29, maybe he's a good shout, but it's a long time in the future.
Yeah, and it also presumes that he wants to stay here and wait 5 years to play for a national team, as opposed to maybe go back to Argentina or go elsewhere and then see if he can increase his reputation such that then Argentina may become calling. I would say another one in that vein is Julian Gressil.
Yes.
He is expected, I believe he's engaged to an American.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
Yes, which means that if he does get married sometime in the near future, it's still going to be that 3-year wait. He's 24 right now, so 27, 28 when he would be eligible. Again, that's better, but it's still, you're waiting 3 years for a player.
Yeah, and Shaq Moore, Reggie Cannon, those guys will have their right back spot locked down by then.
Yeah, and that's why I think one you already mentioned who is already a U.S. citizen, that's the one that I would go with and I think should be called in soon is Stefan Fry, who is already a citizen. He got his citizenship in June 2017. I think we forget that because when he was called into the January camp, I believe in January of 2017, he wasn't yet a U.S. citizen, so he couldn't technically play.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
But he got called in. It was some weird loophole. I think the same thing happened with Kakuta Mane for a period of time, but you still called them in to keep them available and around. But I think Stefan Fry, given the season he's had, and given the fact that we still have...
Has he had a good season? I don't know. I haven't seen
I think statistically he's had an absurdly good season. Better than, I think, any goalkeeper. Certainly any goalkeeper in the league. So I think he definitely...
I'm all in on Zach Stefan.
I know you are.
I like Stefan as a second name, not a first name.
That's fine.
For my US national team goalkeeper.
But Stefan Fry is also only 32 years old, which for a goalkeeper is baby years. So you got plenty of time.
It's adult years.
I mean, Raguzan's 34, 35, I think.
Yeah,
so I think that Stefan Fry could and should be called in to compete just because why not?
All right. I've got a couple of interesting ones for you. If we go to FC Dallas, there are 3 Colombians who could become US eligible. Michael Barrios, 27-year-old winger, he got his green card in April 2018. So by the time he's 32, we could get him on the wing for the United States.
Yep.
Yeah. It's kind of fun in the future, right? Similarly, though, Santiago Mosquera is younger. He's only 23. Left winger, plays for FC Dallas, loves to dribble on his right foot. I don't know about his green card status, but that is someone who, maybe in the future would be interesting. And the real reason I think all of this is interesting is Oscar Pareja. So if Oscar Pareja, Colombian-American, is the choice to be US men's national team coach, I could see a weird thing where he then brings along a load of Colombians turned Americans with him through his run.
I don't know about that, Daryl, because I don't think we have any history in recent times of a national team manager from another country bringing in players from that country to represent the U.S. national team.
Colombian-American will be the new German-American.
There you go.
Yeah. There's also, this is a weird one because it doesn't quite fit in with this, but Jesus Ferreira recently scored that hat-trick for Tulsa Roughnecks. He's only 17. We don't quite understand his citizenship status, right? There are some... MLSsoccer.com says that he's a US citizen. I saw Matt Doyle tweet that he understands that he is a US citizen, born in Colombia, but is a US citizen, but can't play for US teams until he turns 18. And I can't figure out what the mechanism is that would make that happen.
Nor can I.
I think he's a weird rare case on his own that we don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the we don't understand part is very important to say upfront and continuously, because it's also the case that with certain green cards, I think are very different in terms of, I think you can apply for one that like you are an exceptional performer, or you're a specific performer, or you're performing in entertainment. You can have lots of different.
It's the one I've got.
Which one do you have?
No, I don't really.
I mean, really, what did you have?
I came in on a K1 fiance visa.
There you go.
Got married, then got a permanent resident card.
Because you had to change your status. And I think that's what I'm
getting. Yeah, I had to change status after I got married.
And so what I'm saying is, like, I do think that there are potentially cases where a player has come in as like an elite performer, and thus they justify being given that green card. If suddenly they like aren't at that level anymore. Like, I just think there's lots of wrinkles in there that we don't possibly know about when you go to refile or change your status. Do they reevaluate what you came here on?
Not to get too deep into immigration law, but I think once you get the visa is the thing that is different, that can be about performer status and all that kind of stuff. But then when you get a green card, it's just a permanent resident card.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah. We don't know stuff.
So there aren't really different types of permanent resident card. There's just different paths to get one in the first place.
Okay, so then once you've got the green card, then it does seem like 5 years citizenship. Yes. Or Daryl Grove, 13 years?
Yeah, I should do it. I really should, yeah. So, yeah, there's your answer.
All right.
Yes. Yamil Assad is another one that I forgot to mention. He never played for Argentina at any level. He's only 24. But he was on loan at Atlanta last year. He's on loan at DC this year. He doesn't really necessarily have a long-term future in the United States, but, hard-working attacking winger. He could fit in with the US.
He could, but then you really do have to factor in life changes, because Julian Gressil, as I said, it sounds like, I think in a recent Athletic article with Felipe Cardenas, he said like he might be open to representing the US, or was more open, but I think it still requires him to like stay here, and like he, if he wants to go back to Germany and try, that might make it harder for him to get the status. So all I'm saying is, it's going to be a long wait for a lot of these guys. Let's focus on what we have.
Yes, I was about to close with the same idea.
All right.
Are you ready for the final question of the day?
Sure.
Final question of the day comes from Andy Limburner. Andy Limburner asks, when evaluating centre-backs, what are the top 3 traits or abilities that you look for? And is it any different when evaluating young centre-backs?
Sure. All right, so I don't think I've gone like I have 3 things, but they're not particularly like specific. So whatever, we'll jump around. I'm going to say the first thing is his or her game all one thing? And what I mean by that is, like, are they just winning headers? Are they just putting in tackles on the ground? Are they just really good at distributing the ball? Are they just good at leading the line? Like, I think if you're watching a player who, say it's a center back who wins everything in the air, that can be really great, but it can also be the case that we've both seen the center back who comes sprinting 20 yards over to win a header, and they jump over their own center back to do so, and suddenly there's a gap in behind. If their whole game is just built on doing this one thing really well, then to me, that speaks to problematic areas elsewhere.
Well, that's interesting. But it could be that just that is a game that called for a bunch of headers, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and even then. So, like, I think if you're watching them a couple times. But the bigger thing for me is, like, can he or she win the header, but then also, like, drop into a supporting role? Or can he or she police that line? And that's another one. And then I'll do 2, and then I'll let you go.
So you're trying to make sure that it's not just, like, one standout attribute, but everything else is lacking.
Exactly.
And if that is the case, then you're like, I don't know about this.
Yeah. And then I think a big one as well for me, and this is a thing that I believe Mourinho talked about, or has been talked about with Man
centre-back expert Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, is the centre-back leading, the primary force leading the line, or are they the one who's a bit more reactive? And I think we both played for teams.
Isn't it okay to be either?
It is, but that's the thing I would look for, is that if I'm looking for a centre-back to come in and be the organizer and the leader, if this center back isn't doing that for their team, if they're sort of listening to the older head or the better head or whatever, then they're maybe not the one I'm going to be looking for. Versus if I want like a younger player to come in and sort of like enjoy the tutelage of a more veteran center back, then I might go that route.
Interesting. Might as well give you a third one while you're on
size, but not just in terms of is taller is better. Like, and I think we would both do this. That if we were playing a team that had a 5'5" person at center back, we would instantly be like, okay, what's going on? Like, because it does make it stand out.
I would weirdly fear that person. I would be thinking,
exactly,
are all their attacks going to start with this guy?
Exactly.
Yeah. Is this guy an Olympic level sprinter?
See, there you go. Or are they like the best like defensive organizer ever? Can he like does he win every tackle? Like that stuff factors into it.
We have a player on our Sunday team. I won't name him in case he's listening, but he is not as tall as you'd expect of a centre back. He's not 5'5". He's taller than 5'5". He wins every header that comes his way.
Yep.
Right? Some people have ups.
Yeah. Some people just love going up and challenging for those balls. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I think that really does speak volumes. And and really like look at Gary Medel. Like Gary Medel isn't short, but he's not tall either. I think he's like 5'11", maybe 5'10 and a half, something like that.
He's not centre back tall.
No, but he's not international centre back tall, but
Matt Miazga would look down on him.
It literally and figuratively, there we go. But but it does also show you that, like, then Gary Medel can play for that Chile team that were so exciting and can play for many successful teams in Europe. And, like, it's not just about size. It's about what they do to compensate if they are a shorter player trying to compete at that center back spot.
Interesting. All right, so my list is actually different, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
First thing I look for genuinely is decision-making. Players, when they decide to go and step and win a ball, is it the correct decision?
Yeah. And thank you. As usual with the Total Soccer Show, I talk a lot, and then Daryl succinctly says what I was trying to say, which is that's what I meant with that. Like, they make the decision to go win that header, but maybe that was the right choice, or maybe Daryl Grove has called for the ball, and I'm sprinting across, and I end up knocking him over to try to win the header.
Or the cardinal sin for me, the thing that would worry me the most is someone who just tries to win everything.
Yep.
And maybe you could put together an impressive highlight reel of the 70% of things that they won because they went and challenged. They stepped out of the back line and went and challenged every time. But if they got skipped around 3 times because they were just like way off with that challenge, that's a huge concern to me. I think it's a thing that's coachable, but I also think it might be just a fundamental flaw.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a player that is doing that in a really risky way, then you are not helpful. It's really about decision making because if people who've never played centre back, and you've played more recently, right, which is interesting, it really is about decision making, right? It's knowing when to step and win, when to back off, when to push the line higher, when to drop deeper. That's most of the job, is making the best decision, even though it's usually a series of choices where there's no good choice.
Yeah.
It's choosing the lesser of 10 evils every time you make a decision. That's defending.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have thoughts on what you've just said.
Yeah, go for it.
But no, I'd rather you keep going and list your other 2 first, because I feel like you may have just made me add like 3.1 to mine. Okay,
I'll do a couple more then.
Sure.
The thing I always look for is the not just communication, but the link with the rest of the back line. Like, is this player holding the offside line, or does this player panic and go deep when someone else runs deep?
Yeah.
Is this player, there's a line being held and they're stepping too high? Eric Bailly was guilty of this, I think, for the first Newcastle goal at the weekend. He kind of stepped out of the back line but didn't do anything when he got there. So all he did was make a hole, basically, right? So I think that's a really big thing as well, is like, how are they at staying as part of the team defensive shape? I think that's important. The third thing I think people should look for now is passing. Is this player technically good enough? Is this player brave enough to play passes through lines into midfield? Right? It's very easy, especially in a professional or a high quality player, to play from left centre back to left back or left centre back to right centre back. It's much harder to be John Stones and when under pressure to be able to like look down the field and like play through the lines and start an attack. Matt Miazga is good at this. John Brooks is good at this. That's why these guys, I think, are really good centre-backs. I think that's a key thing that you need to look for these days.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that.
Okay.
I think if we're boiling it down, I would say variety of ability maybe is a big one for me, of like, are they just doing this, or can they do a variety of things, including maybe passing? I'd say decision-making, I agree with you. That's a nice way to solidify that one. And then the one that I think like that kind of occurred to me with what you were saying, particularly with that I've been playing more defense, is awareness. And not just like, are they aware that there's a person behind them, but sort of aware of the specific threats or things that aren't threats. That's what I've been recognizing playing more defense, is like, if I look across and I see like, oh, this person who's playing left wing back is very fast, very, very good at what they're doing. I don't necessarily need to worry as much about them defensively, so I can cheat over a little bit inside and help Daryl double team this striker who is very good.
Yeah.
But then suddenly if that left wing back
I had him covered, I was fine.
Of course, yeah. But then if suddenly that left wing back is no longer there and there's a person who's maybe less inclined to come back defensively, they want to get forward in the attack, but maybe they're not going to track back, I'm going to try to work with that, but I'm also going to maybe cheat over to the left now to cover that space.
This is why I'm talking about the lesser of 10 evils, right? It's really no good choice. It's just trying to cover as many holes as you possibly can. Yeah. It's like the eternal duvet problem, but in multiple directions.
Yeah. Like, exactly. Now you've got people sleeping at all ends, and you got to figure out how to accommodate everybody. Yep.
Trying to throw a duvet over 11 people.
Yeah.
The other thing, this is a weird one, is how calm do I feel when they're doing something, right? Like, there are definitely some centre-backs, even at a high level, who sort of panic me because I just don't trust them either with the ball or like I think there's someone who's going to get tackled or is going to give the ball away. Because if you give the ball away as a centre back, the striker's in on goal, right? Like Omar Gonzalez always, for all his power and strength, and I think he oddly was very good at stepping and winning things, I never quite trusted him with the ball. I didn't trust his decision making. So I always wonder how assured is the defender and how assured am I when that defender has the ball?
Yeah, I would agree with all of those things. I hope that I inspire confidence when I'm back there for you and not like, oh boy, he's got the ball again. This is going to be problematic. So the second part, what would you look for young center backs?
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's that different. I would just maybe add two things, which like maybe this isn't what Andy's looking for, but I would say coachability. That if I'm looking for a young player as like someone I'm going to coach or work with, it would be how do they respond to the instructions I'm giving them. If they're a center back who in the past has gone hunting for like, the long balls, the aerial challenges, and suddenly I'm saying, no, I want you to stay deeper. I want you to sit back. I don't want you challenging for that. Do they listen or do they just keep doing what comes naturally to them because that's what they're good at? That's one thing. And then the other thing was just how do they respond? With a young player, if they get beaten for pace, do they just, head down, like shut down for the entire game? Or do they think, okay, that player beat me for pace. Next time I'm going to give them 5 yards. Or next time I'm going to switch with the other center back because they're a little bit faster. About how do they problem solve in relation to what they've dealt with?
Problem solving.
That's what I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, problem stopping.
Yeah, we go. Problem stopping.
I would say with young centre backs,
problem sweeping too.
Okay, with young centre backs. It's almost like you can see someone with the physical gift, like say someone's tall, good in the air. Maybe they're fast as well, so they cover ground, and you can be really excited about that. But if they just show no inclination to, in terms of reading the game and decision making, I would say maybe you haven't got a centre back there. Yep. Maybe that person should go play winger or something.
Yeah. Go out wide. Stay out there.
Anything else to add on centre backs?
Nothing. I just like centre backs. I'll say that much.
You do. You're increasingly more well disposed towards them.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Well, thank you to everybody.
Until they start saying stuff like John Stones is really good at playing out of the back.
Hey. Thank you to everybody whose questions we answered today, but everybody who sent in questions as well. If you've got questions for us, please send them to totalsoccershow.com/questions.
Yeah.
That will fill a document where we have everybody's questions. If you subscribe to the Total Soccer Show at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one of your questions per month.
I am sad that we didn't get any animal-related, like what dog would represent or what would happen if a dog played soccer. I do enjoy those questions.
Actually, there were a couple of dog questions.
Of course there were.
If you want to pull them in, I can pull them in.
Oh, boy. Do you remember any of them?
No.
All right, that's fine. Remember. I feel like you said no.
No, we had the what breed of dog with the US men's national team.
Yeah, we've done that one, right?
That one,
I was just wondering if there was more like, what breed of iguana best represents? Like that's.
Do you really want that? I feel like you're asking for trouble.
I do not want that. Yeah. The answer is Godzilla from 1998. Because it's Americanized and it's huge? Yeah, why not?
If you want to join and support the Total Soccer Show, it's totalsoccershow.com/join. And once again, if you subscribe and join at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one question a month, even the non-dog ones.
Even the non-dog ones. We also have many scouting reports to get to. Fewer in the hopper, I'll say, now that we've gotten back to scouting.
Yep. Are we up to date? Are these recent?
For the most part, yeah.
Oh, no.
James Jones scouting Andrew Carlton, 18-year-old American attacker for Atlanta United.
Oh, Jersey Jonathan, if you're listening, please feel free to not listen to this one since you're sick of hearing about Andrew Carlton.
There you go.
Yeah.
Andrew has been a regular for Atlanta United too when he isn't.
Just put your fingers in your ears or something. I know.
Andrew is a regular for Atlanta United too when he isn't pulled away to be an unused sub for the big club. On Sunday, he got both assists in a 2-1 win over the Charleston Battery. The first was from a corner. The second was from an audacious through ball.
I've seen it.
From behind the halfway line that bypassed 7 players, finding Romario Williams, who rounded the goalkeeper for the eventual winner. Andrew was also recently named number 19 on MLS's 2018 22 under 22 list.
Ooh, they dropped the age a little bit on that as well. That's interesting. Yeah, this pass from Carlton has a bit of the Busquets about it, as in it has a bit of disguise, like it looks like he's going to go big and diagonal, but instead he goes basically straight down the middle.
Yep.
Yeah. Beautiful pass from Carlton.
I enjoyed it. So did Matt Doyle. I saw him tweeting about that several times last night.
Speaking of Atlanta players, Mike Spinelli is scouting George Bello, the 16-year-old American left-back for Atlanta United. I can guess what this present is before I open it, because we talked about it yesterday. Mike says Bello became the 6th youngest scorer in MLS history, got his first goal in his second start, a 2-1 victory over New England in Atlanta. The homegrown talent was camped at the touchline, even with the last New England defender, when Leandro Gonzalez Perez...
Who is not eligible for the United States, I looked him up.
Does he have a cap for does he youth caps for Argentina?
I think so, yeah.
Took his free kick from near the centre of the pitch. Bello raced behind the New England defence to accept the pass, taking an aggressive touch toward the box, holding off a defender in the process. With his second touch, Bello half-volleyed a rocket to the near post with his left foot, surprising New England's keeper, probably Matt Turner, and putting Atlanta up 1-0 in the 17th minute.
Well done, George Bello. Well done, Daryl Grove, for reading that entire report with the emotion that it deserved.
Yep. I read good.
You a good reader. Connor Siegel scouting Brooks Lennon, 21-year-old American right back for RSL. Lennon was number 15 on the 22 under 22 list, thanks in no small part to his work this season. He has started every game for RSL since March, notching 5 assists. That's not too shabby, given that he's still learning how to be a fullback. He's also confident. Asked if he thought he'd be on the list prior to it being published, he responded, "Yeah, I do. Personally, I think I should be pretty low on the list, but that's my opinion. But I should definitely be on it."
It's a weird blend of confidence and insecurity.
See, this is where I don't know what low means. This is one of the hard things with these types of lists is, like, does he mean low as in I should be number 3? Or does he mean low as in I should be, like, not that high up?
I think you're overthinking it. I think, like, number 1 is high.
I don't know.
Because you're top of the list. Right?
All right, we'll
top
see.
is high.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to ask him. We'll have to follow up and see what he says.
I don't think we need to. Anurag Anjaria is scouting Andrea Novakovic, the 22-year-old American forward, on loan at Fortuna Sittard from Reading. Novakovic had a quiet game stats-wise as he registered no goals and no assists, and I'm pretty sure no shots on target. In yet another high-scoring draw for Fortuna Sittard against relegation buddies FC Emmen.
I hope that's how they think of each other.
It's a very nice way to look at relegation. Right?
Richie Garcia scouting Emerson Hyndman, the 22-year-old American midfielder on loan at Hibernian from Bournemouth.
Go on, you Hibs.
There you go. Emerson scored a goal this past weekend in Hibs' 6-0 drubbing of Hamilton Academical, calmly slotting the ball past the goalkeeper. He's been getting consistent minutes and seems to be adjusting well, as he is regularly involved in Hibs' best goal-scoring chances.
Lovely.
Well done, Emerson.
Justin Hansen is scouting Frank Kessia, the 21-year-old Ivorian midfielder for AC Milan. Justin says, "Frank, the tank is on fire. Your defence is terrified." Is that a reference to something?
I have no idea.
Frank the tank's on fire. Your defence is terrified.
I mean, Frank the tank certainly is.
In Milan's 4-1 drubbing of Sassuolo, Kessie opened the scoring by picking up a loose ball at the top of his own box, took it coast to coast and slotted it past the keeper and into the bottom corner with ease. Kessie has 2 goals and an assist through 6 Serie A matches this season.
Well done, Frank. Sam Creef scouting Ezekiel Barco, 19-year-old Argentine attacker for Atlanta United, also not eligible for the USA. Barco has struggled to find his way. Oh, sorry, I thought you were about to interject with, yes, I went through all the Atlanta players.
I did.
Barco has struggled to find his way back into the team since his suspension, thanks to the excellent play of Julian Gressil and Tito Villalba. However, he has been consistently making substitute appearances. In better news, he was named as the number 6 rated player on MLS's 22 under 22.
Michael Fisk is scouting Andreas Kristensen, the 22-year-old Danish centre-back for Kehelse. Andreas has started in both of Kehelse's Europa League wins against Greek club
what are you doing?
and Hungarian. I'm just livening things up. Hungarian club Vidi. It's Chelsea. Andreas Kristensen plays for Chelsea.
Yep.
So he started in both the Europa League matches against PAOK and Vidi. Kristensen was nearly beaten one-on-one on a Vidi counter-attack, but he shielded the ball with his body and forced a bad shot.
That's good centre-backing.
Good centre-back in Andreas Kristensen of Chelsea.
I forgot to add, he was number 8 on MLS's 22 under 22. I found that surprising.
He was a write-in candidate.
Yeah, it's weird. Dylan,
Bobby Walshaw wrote him in 10 times.
That sounds about right. Dylan Veach scouting Kai Havertz, 19-year-old German midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen. Kai and Leverkusen won their second Europa League game over AEK Larnaca, something like that.
Larnaca.
There we go, 4-2. Kai had Leverkusen's first goal of the game, taking advantage of a move and cutback from Belarbi before placing it into the opposite side netting. In addition, Kai earned his second straight call-up to the German national team.
Go on, Kai. Alec Brew is scouting Davy Selke, the 23-year-old German striker for Hertha Berlin. Alex says Selke is back from his preseason injury and has made sub-appearances in each of the Berlin side's last 3 matches. Welcome back, Davy.
Yep. Axel Romain is scouting Nathaniel Chalobah, the 23-year-old English midfielder for Watford. Chalobah has been called up to the England first team. This is his second call-up, but he still has not seen the field. He does already have 97 caps for the English youth teams, many of which came under Gareth Southgate. When asked about Chalobah's call-up, Southgate said, quote, "It's maybe a bit early for him physically, but to come and train with us, we believe he can have an impact in the future," end quote.
So we should not put money on Chalobah playing in the Croatia and Spain games.
You never know.
Given
Gareth
that
Southgate's a
game.
gambler.
Quote. Again, we're going to talk England tomorrow, right? You promise, Taylor? You promise?
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll talk
We'll
England
see.
tomorrow
We'll see.
when we talk USA v Colombia. Jeff Markman is scouting Rhys Nelson, the 18-year-old English midfielder on loan at Hoffenheim from Arsenal. Jeff says Rhys Nelson, who made his Champions League and full Bundesliga debuts since the last report, made another breakthrough in receiving his first call-up to the England under-21 team. He joins fellow first-timers Phil Foden and Harvey Barnes in what should be an exciting Young Lions squad. Nelson celebrated his call-up by scoring his second goal for Hoffenheim in a 30-minute substitute appearance. A short, looping ball put Nelson through for a strong right-footed finish across goal into the top of the side netting.
That's where you want it to go.
Englishmen in Germany. That's where I want them to go.
All right.
Thank you.
You want Englishmen to go to Germany?
Yes. Get minutes in the Bundesliga. Thank you to everyone for today's scouting reports. Again, you can join the Scouting Network at totalsoccershow.com/join. If you are waiting for your player this week, I promise I'll be making scouting assignments this week. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Register to vote.
Listeners, do what Taylor said. And thank you for listening. We will talk to you again tomorrow.